Hello everyone, my name is Pat. Welcome to my channel. Today, I will be sharing with you guys some of my beginner fantasy recs. I've gotten a comment like this a few months back and I did answer the comment. This is actually a video that I've been wanting to do, that I was contemplating to do. So here it is, finally. I did arrange this in terms of genre, like sub-genre wise under the fantasy umbrella. And that's why to me, these are like great beginner recs. So the first ones are the magical realism or lower fantasy sci-fi type books. These are set in our world. The magic is present, but it's not like a hidden world or something. It's localized to like a certain group of people who have access to this magic, that type of thing. And then the other one are standalones. These are high fantasy, so they are completely different worlds from ours. But with them being standalones, the magic system is very easy to understand. And the last one are easy magic systems. So these are also high fantasy, but these do have more complicated, more complex magic systems, but still some magic systems that are very easy to get into. And they're very easy to read, they're very fast paced. They don't have a lot of terms that you have to remember. They're just not epic scale type fantasy. Without further ado, let's get started. The first one is one of my favorite fantasy sci-fi books of all time. So fantasy sci-fi because this is the Penryn and the End of Days series by Suzanne E. This is a dystopian book as well. So this is set in our world. The world has ended and angels have descended. And so there's your fantasy aspect, but it also has a little bit of sci-fi with the way things have changed and the things that have been discovered since the apocalypse, basically. So this is a trilogy and the books are very short. They're very fast paced and the scale gets bigger as the books progress, but it's not very hard to get into. Again, because this is set in our world and it's this, so you understand the world already, and when the characters are getting to know, what's happening in this world or understanding what's happening in this world, it's like you're with them, and so it's very easy to understand, very easy to get into. Again, so fast paced. This is one of those books that even though it's very easy to get into, the world itself is very complex and the plot itself goes in different directions that you would not expect. And I love this so much. When I got into this one, the first book is Angel Fall. When I got into this one, I was just looking for like a fun adventure type thing, very similar to like Shadow Hunters type of world, like Mortal Instruments type of setting, but this goes in a different way. And again, these are very short. This one, first book, is only 280 pages, and then World After is a little over 310 pages, and then this is probably the longest one. This is still 320 pages, so they're still very short, and again, so fast and easy to read. So highly recommend this one of my favorite series of all time. The next one is now I would consider like a modern classic. Everybody knows what this is about, especially with making of, I don't know if it's a film or a TV show, but they already casted Percy Jackson, and by the time that I'm filming this, they have announced it since for just a week. Just a little over a week, I think now, or very recently. So I'm talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is a middle grade series. So again, this is set in our world, and our main character discovers that he is a demigod, and so he gets to know the world and gets to know how this world works. This does expand the world, especially because we're talking about different gods, we're talking about different demigods and different people, and we have this whole mythology background that we're also learning about and seeing the reinterpretation of it in Rick Riordan's world. With it being middle grade, again, it's very easy to read, very fast paced. The first book is actually pretty long, but each of these books are going to be so quick to read. I really enjoy this book. I remember reading this when I was in high school. I was already in high school, but I was having so much fun reading Percy Jackson. So Percy Jackson in a series and in the same world. I have the entire series, but I don't feel like holding it up because the books are very thick. The Lost Hero series, or the Heroes of Olympus series. This is the sequel series to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and now we are getting to learn about Roman gods as well, because we have now demigods by the Roman counterpart or equivalent of the Greek gods. Percy Jackson is still present in here, and also Annabeth and some of the other characters that we meet in Percy Jackson series, but we also meet the other characters as well. And again, the world just expands. This is still middle grade, so it's still very easy to get into, very easy to read, and very easy to follow. It's not, even though mythology is very complex and there's a lot of things, like mythology itself there's a lot of stories in there, but it's not overwhelming. It's so fun to read as well. So The Lost Heroes. And of course, once you get into this world, there are a lot more other series in this one, like Apollo's series, Magnus Chase as well, which is the Norse mythology aspect. And with Rick Riordan making his own imprint, you have now different authors from different backgrounds writing pretty much in the same world, but with their own mythology, like Indian mythology, Korean mythology. Those books are also really great to get into. And now we're getting back to darker themes. Now, Percy Jackson is very light because it is middle grade. Penryn and the End of Day series, it gets very dark, especially as the story progresses. And now we're going back a little bit darker, or we're going a little bit darker as well. And I'm talking about the Monsters of Verity series by V. Schwab, and this is YA, a duology. It is already completed. First book is The Savage Song, and the second book is Our Dark Duet. And this is set in our world. It's also kind of dystopian and sci-fi as well. We have this world where when people commit sins, a lot of the times, especially if they're pretty big sins, gets transformed into monsters. We're following two characters. One is a monster, wants to be human, or doesn't want to be a monster. They're like opposites of each other. I don't know if the word localized is the right term, but it doesn't have a very difficult fantasy world to understand. It is still set in our world and still kind of following the rules that we have, but we're also learning about how the world has changed. The characters are also discovering how the world has changed and a little bit more about monsters and how they're created, etc. So this was a lot of fun to read as well. This is one of my favorite series as well, favorite duologies. Next one is the Villain series by V. Schwab. I don't have physical copies of this book. And this book series, I'm not sure if it's going to continue. Hopefully it does, because the first part of this series, or when this was first released, I knew that this was supposed to be planned, or it was initially planned as just a duology. The first book is Vicious. This is set in our world as well. There are two college students who discover that they can make like superhero type people they call extraordinaries. When they die and are brought back to life, they have different powers now. It's also a story of their friendship, because I think the start of the book, we find out that even though they were really good friends and they had this amazing discovery, they have had differences since, and they've become enemies of each other. Gray main characters, like they're both morally gray main characters, so I really enjoy them. A lot of fun to read, so fast paced, gets you to question the things that they do that are morally gray, and you know, there's a lot of discussions that could be made in terms of the things that they do, but they're complex, fun characters to follow. So that, and then we also have another series that I really enjoy, and this one is another sci-fi fantasy dystopian type book, the Sight series by Neil Schusterman. This is more complex in terms of the world, but at the beginning, because it is set in our world, because you know, you're establishing how the world has changed over the years and how we essentially don't die anymore, we don't get diseases, get older, but we can still kind of regenerate ourselves and go back to being young and make more families. And so now there's an overpopulation, and now the Sights are the ones tasked to glean people, or essentially, you know, unalive, kill people to control the population. And we are following two characters here who become Scythe apprentices. Through them, we get to learn more about what the Scythes are, who they stand for, and how they decide to glean people, and kind of the politics of that as well, and the history of the Scythes, because they have become kind of these scary but respected and mysterious people in the society. So again, the world grows a lot. This is one of my favorite series of all time because of the way the world expands, and you know, the questions that we get and the discussions that we can get from here if we were to move to that direction, which I think like there's a big possibility that we can move into that direction like at this point in our time. So Scythe series. Okay, now we're gonna move to the ones that have an easy magic system. So these are now completely not set in our world, or not dystopian aspect. Oh no, I still have one more. The Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This is set in our world. This is a standalone, and this is about brujos and brujas. We are following a trans main character who wants to prove to his family that he is a real brujo. A lot of fun to read. Again, very easy magic system to understand because it's kind of magical realism as well, where the magic is isolated to this group of people who can wield this magic. Set in our world, so. And also, the hardcover comes in this beautiful stencil embossing. So the first one is another standalone. This is Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston, following a main character who tries to save her kingdom after monsters from the forest start attacking them during the coronation of her friend, the princess and next ruler of their land. And she discovers more about this forest and the history that they have with this, relating to this legend that is very well known in this world. And again, the magic system is also pretty dark. It's also nature-based, which I really enjoy. I love nature-based magic, and very easy to understand it because this is a standalone YA, and it's very fast and easy to read, very quick, a lot of fun, very light. So I think this is a really great beginner fantasy book to read. Another one, this could actually also be magical realism, because here the magic is also isolated to a group of people who practice this magic in this certain, who are the only ones who are able to practice this certain kind of magic. I mean, it's present around the world, but only like witches with this bloodline. And this is another standalone with like mystery aspect to it. So we are following a main character who finds this boy in the forest, and this boy was the one who had gone missing, I think 2 weeks prior, from this all boys kind of delinquent juvenile school. She's kind of regarded as outcast of this small town because of the eccentricities that she has and her family has. So with also that mystery aspect and how it ties to the forest also has some kind of magic in it. The forest is alive. Again, the magic system is not very hard to understand. Very quick to read as well, with it being a standalone, so I really enjoy this one. The next one is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This one is very popular. I feel like you've heard about this, probably read this, but this is mythology based and this is YA. Because this is mythology based, there is magic, but the fantasy aspect of it is not the main premise of the story. We're following the relationship of these 2 characters, the friendship and eventually the love that they form with each other, and just their connection with each other and their story. And so I really enjoy this. I have the special 10-year anniversary edition and also the Olympic edition of this. This is very emotional. This can get very emotional, or at least tug at your heartstrings, and very fast to read as well. I feel like even though it is set during war, it could easily have focused on that and became a really fast-paced, action-packed type story, but this is really just character-driven. We are following our characters and their connection and their story, their friendship, and their eventual love for each other. I loved it. I loved it. And then another one that is very popular is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Now this one is a little bit more, I feel like, because this is fantasy, it's set in a world where magic does exist, or magic exists, but in like small doses, like they know that it exists. And we are following a main character who gets whisked to this magical world that they do know exists. It's kind of, they know exists, they're also not sure it exists because it's very rare for them to witness this magic, because she states that she can turn silver into gold, and the fae in this world, in a way, have a thing about gold. And so she was taken to this kingdom that they have. And this is pretty thick. This is still very much character driven as much as it is heavy on the world and the magic, because we are following 3 different characters here who are discovering their place in this world as women, as girls, in the restrictions that they have, and finding, you know, really where they belong, where they truly belong, what they want to do and what they want to be. So this is more of the, once you get more used to fantasy, this is, I feel like, the second step, I would feel like. So I guess intermediate, but I want to say this is also beginner because it's very easy to get into, for me personally, because the magic is not very hard to understand, or it's not kind of magic where you question a lot of things and things that don't make sense and you want to learn more about the magic. It's very easy to get into. So the next one are series. So these are the ones that are now much more complex in terms of the magic. The first one actually that I'm going to mention is the Winternight series by Katherine Arden. This one is still set in our world, and it's kind of magical realism in a way that magic is present in our world, but there's only a certain people who can see it. It is present, and it's not that they don't have access, other people don't have access to it, but it's more because it's kind of like a hidden kind of world, and the belief that people have on the gods in this world, it makes them even more powerful. So if people don't believe in them anymore, they kind of become obsolete and they don't really exist anymore. So Winternight series, we are following Vasya, who can see these gods, but because of the changes in like the religion, with them shunning these pagan beliefs that they have, there is now an imminent danger that could happen to the world because of these waning beliefs that people have. Still set in our world, but the magic system expands very much. That's why I'm putting this more on this latter side of the category, where magic becomes definitely a lot more complicated as the story goes on. And I enjoyed following Vasya as the main character, and you know, the people around her as well, and her family and their beliefs, and kind of like the historical setting as well, where their world really is changing. So I really enjoyed this one of my favorite series to follow or to read as well. The next one is very popular as well. You've heard about this. This is the Shadow and Bone series, or the first series in the Grishaverse series by Leigh Bardugo. This one is high fantasy. It's not set in our world, but the magic system is not very hard to understand, especially with our main character, who starts off in the book as someone who doesn't know how to wield magic. And so when she discovers that she can wield magic, we learn also more about the magic itself, because it's kind of like a hierarchy type thing as well, where these people are separated. So people who can do magic, people who don't, rich people, poor people, etc. And so they know about magic, but they don't fully understand it because they're not privy to it. So Shadow and Bone series, so also very easy to get into very fast. I have read this years ago, and I recently reread it when the Shadow and Bone series came out, and I actually really enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. So next one is another series that I really enjoyed. This one I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did, because of the first book I received in a book box, and I was like, I should read this. So this is All the Stars and Teeth and All the Tides of Fate by Adalyn Grace. And duology completed, and the reason why I really enjoy this one is the magic system actually itself. It's very dark, it's very gritty. I love the differences in the magic as well, because in this world there are different islands in this kind of country. The heir to this country, in her coronization ceremony, things go awry. The different islands that is part of this kingdom has different magics that they can wield, and so different people from the different kingdoms have, you know, different magics, and I love learning about them. So much fun. And also, there's found family in here. Again, very easy to get into. You have a cast of characters that are so fun to follow and so just charming and lovable to read about. So, All the Stars and Teeth by Adalyn Grace. I'm actually looking forward to her next book that is coming out later this year, because I really love this one so much. The writing is also very beautiful. The magic system is very unique and dark. Another series that I also love, of course. I only have one book from this series so far. I'm on my way to collecting them. The one here that I have is One Dark Throne. I believe this is the third book, if I'm not wrong. But the series is called the Three Dark Crowns series. The first book is Three Dark Crowns. It's kind of similar to All the Stars and Teeth, where different groups of people in the same kingdom have different powers, and this is a matriarchal system. So the queen gives birth every year, or every queen gives birth to triplets, and the triplets have magic that is related to this different parts of the kingdom, so the three main kingdoms, and essentially they are going to compete as they grow up, which one of them is the most powerful and which one of them will rule. They're taken by these people who their affinity for magic is with, so they get trained, and eventually they have to kill each other so that they can get the throne, because only one of them can get the throne and both have to die because it upsets the balance type thing. So very dark, a lot of things going on. I think this was initially planned to be a trilogy, but then because a lot of people enjoy this one, they decided to make this a quartet. But I think it suffered from that, because the third and the fourth book kind of feel like, the third book kind of feels like a filler. Like there's not a lot of things happening in the third book. The majority of the thing that happened in the third book happened in the last third of the book. So it definitely felt like a filler, and I felt like it wasn't really super needed. It could have been kind of combined either both with the second book and the fourth book just to make it a trilogy, because I felt like it just felt like a filler. I still really enjoy this one. The magic system is great and very easy to get into. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is another, of course, favorite of mine, and this is the Graceling Realm series. It is still ongoing, and I thought we weren't going to get more of this. The fifth book, is that right? Or is it the sixth book now? I don't even remember anymore. So Sea Sparrow is the fifth book in the series, I was right. And the first three books are kind of written as standalones, so they're not really books that you need to read prior to the story, or it's kind of standalones, because the second book, Fire, is actually a prequel to Graceling, but it connects at the end of it, you will see. High fantasy, in this world there are people who have graces, so abilities, and they are used by people, especially our main character who is being used by one of the kings in this world as like his assassin. The graces are not straightforward. Usually there are different things about graces that you discover as you go on about it, and there's really not one person who can tell you that your grace is this and that. You learn it as you get access to the grace. You're the one who will, or other people are going to label you a certain thing based on your grace. It expands the world, definitely, especially with Bitter Blue, the fourth book in this series. There is another kingdom that is introduced in this world, more about the magic itself and in this world alone, outside of the graces. So I'm really excited to read Sea Sparrow. My least favorite is definitely going to be Bitter Blue, because I felt like that's the one that I found myself least connected to the characters. Graceling and Fire were just top tier. I love Fire so much. I love the romance in there. The relationship that the two have, it was so cute. Anyway, so Graceling Realm, I feel like this is one of those books that you can just read the first two, maybe first three books, and you don't have to read the rest if you don't want to. Again, very easy to get into. Graces are essentially like the magic of this world, and it's very dependent on the person who has the grace, what the grace is, and how they have used it so far. So that is it. So those are all of my beginner fantasy recs. I actually still have a few more that I haven't talked about. I think those are more intermediate over beginner, so I can talk about those more next time. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have fantasy recs that you think are great for beginners as well, comment them down below, and I will see you on my next one.